Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Bonsai Network podcast. I am your host, Bjorn Bjorholm, and thank you again for joining me. On this particular episode, I am going to be conducting an interview with a good friend of mine and someone that a lot of you probably know, although indirectly, and that is Oscar from Bonsai Empire. So Bonsai Empire is a website. It's an online forum and an online outlet for sort of introducing people to the art of bonsai and then helping them through the process of getting involved in the art and expanding their knowledge, becoming better at the art through sort of digital media and through the internet. And I've been doing a lot of projects with Oscar over the last few years. He and I did an online beginner's course and an online intermediate course, and we're working on an advanced course at this particular point. But we don't get a lot of opportunities to actually get together and sit down and talk because he's from Amsterdam, and of course I'm living in the States now. But recently we were both in India for a big convention with a group called Bonsai Namaste. And we had a little bit of an opportunity to sit down and talk to one another about his website and how it operates and some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that are going on in terms of the future of Bonsai Empire. So I'm really excited to bring you guys this podcast. I hope you enjoy it. So without further ado, this is Oscar from Bonsai Empire. All right, I'm here with Oscar Jonker. How's it going, man?
Good.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm finally glad that we're able to actually get together and do the podcast because you and I run into each other all over the world, but
quite a few times.
There's never really an opportunity to like sit down and actually have a chat. So
True.
Yeah, it's nice to do this. So
True.
We are, for those of you guys listening, we are in Pune, India right now.
Yeah.
We're here for the Bonsai Namaste giant Indian bonsai convention. So what's
the place where size matters numbers matter.
Yeah, exactly. So what's your impression so far of the exhibition?
This is a big show, man. They say they have like 1,000 trees on display.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Quality varies, there's good trees and there's a few trees I wouldn't put on a show, but it's big.
Yeah.
Sure.
They put everything out there for sure. Yeah. I think the goal was to kind of just show off kind of what they have available here, and then hopefully like kickstart people into wanting to do bonsai more. So
and they have an army of international bonsai experts. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think was it like 18 or 19 of us from around the world. So representing from all over the planet. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. The crazy thing in doing bonsai like this, you meet the same people all over the world. You run into like I've got friends like you from you're from Holland, right? Yeah. Right. And then you got people from South America, people from East Asia, from Southeast Asia, all over the place. So it's pretty cool.
It's nice. There's this team of international bonsai expert travelers and some media. We bump into each other everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, in Europe, in the US, in Asia,
right?
All kinds of places.
And you're here specifically to film the event, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So that's become kind of a big part of Bonsai Empire, right?
True.
Yeah.
Reporting on the international bonsai events, whatever's happening.
So do you sort of view Bonsai Empire as kind of like a media outlet in that regard, or?
Yeah.
Okay, like what's the goal with the videos then? With traveling around, is it to just show kind of the different styles of bonsai around the world, or what is it more for educational purposes, or just to show things off? Like what's the sort of your theory behind
good question.
approach behind Bonsai
there's different kind of videos. I think the videos of the exhibitions and the videos of even of most demonstrations are not necessarily educational. It's mostly entertaining, and especially for the exhibits, it's interesting to see the styles, for regions of the world. A show in Japan is going to be completely different than one in Europe or US, and again very different from what you see in India or even China. So it's for me it's very interesting to see those changes, and I think people who watch all those exhibition movies, they will at least sitting at home have an impression of what's happening worldwide.
Right.
So I think that last thing is also important. It's like it's showing what's happening worldwide, and trends, etc.
Yeah. What have you noticed difference-wise between? Let's just take like the U.S. and Europe. Have you noticed like big differences between the two? Or are they kind of all moving in the same direction, or sort of separating from one another?
Gosh, that's a difficult question.
Yeah, it's a bit of a loaded question too. So yeah.
I get that more often though, but hard to answer. If you compare Europe and US, they are much more similar than when you compare Europe or the US with India, or at the same time if you compare with Japan. And in the US, I think increasingly they're using local tree species, which really makes sense, you know. I mean,
of course.
Bonsai is an art form, but it's not necessarily an art form that has to take the exact same tree species that they use in Japan. And at the same time, that's happening in Europe as well. And I think in Europe, for a large part, it already happened. We're using a lot of local pine species, junipers,
right?
Deciduous trees,
right?
Yeah, it's hard for me to really see, you know, how much is copied from Japan, like one-on-one, and how much is copied and learned and refined and changed over time. I mean, I'm only doing this for 17 years, which, you know, it's really is nothing.
Right. I mean, that's still a pretty long time, though. Yeah,
it is a long time.
Yeah, that is a long time.
But not for bonsai.
So have you been doing Bonsai Empire for 17 years, or bonsai as you started it as a hobby 17 years ago, or did you start longer ago than that?
The hobby started a little bit longer ago, but not that much. And Bonsai Empire started 17 years ago.
Okay. Where were you first introduced to bonsai? What was your initial introduction to the art?
I think it wasn't IKEA, but it was one of those, you know, big stores, and they sold well, now I know, very crappy bonsai tree, but back then I
them mall
loved it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't really like that term though, because I started, and I think most people start that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody starts with great material. Everybody starts with indoor trees, and they die 5 times. And I mean, you get a new one, and it dies again, and you get another one, and slowly you figure out that you have to learn how to water and how often. And you don't just water every day. You water when it's needed, well, etc. So that's how I started. And then before that, I already grew stuff in my parents' garden, herbs or, you know, whatever. And so the interest was always there. But yeah.
Yeah. So did you have like any exposure to like Japan or Asian arts before that, or was it just one of those things you walked into the store, you saw the tree in IKEA or wherever, and you're like, that's kind of cool, I want to try it.
I mean, I was 15, right? So I wasn't interested in what was happening in China or
so you
Japan.
weren't like doing karate or something like that?
Oh, well, fuck, I was doing karate.
Yeah. Same as me.
All right, yeah. To be honest, like I watched the Karate Kid movies, obviously, and then I figured out I should restart karate. And before that, I did judo, but I don't think judo was very much, for me, not very much linked to Japan. I just a thing that I did and didn't really think about. But then, about a year later, I had my first bonsai tree. So, yeah, probably it is more linked together than I.
Right. Yeah, there's layers upon layers that you could peel off, I'm sure. So,
yeah.
So what was the initial reason why you decided to start Bonsai Empire? Was it just a website idea, or was it like a local club or something that you turned into a website? Like, what was sort of the story behind Bonsai Empire?
I got a piece of software to make like a very simple website with no knowledge of HTML or JavaScript or whatever. So just a super basic website. I installed it and I thought, okay, so what topic should I make my first website about? And since I just started bonsai, I thought, okay, well, what the hell? Let's do bonsai. Could have been anything really, but it was bonsai. And
okay.
I mean, the first website was a horrible website.
Sure, yeah.
You still have like a yellow background.
Oh God, yeah, like black text. Or, yeah.
And cool fonts like Times New Roman.
Right. Yeah, things have changed quite drastically since then.
Yeah.
So you said that was 17 years ago. So that would have been 2001 then.
Yeah.
Around there. Okay.
Yeah, I was blocking my mom's phone line all the day when I was uploading my new website.
Right. Is this back when they had like the dial-up modems?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
could hear it
The one
buzzing.
with the cool sound.
Right, the login sound, yeah.
My mom would yell to me like, "You have to get offline because I need to call my mom or whatever." Yeah.
At least you weren't looking at something bad online. You were doing something productive with your time, right? Yeah, it could have been a lot worse, I guess. So there was no risk of knocking on your door and something nefarious going on behind the scenes there. So yeah. So when you started the website, did you want to just promote bonsai, or did you think about it being an educational type site, or it was just to make a site just to try it out?
Absolutely, yeah. No, the last thing, yeah. No, I had no, in the very beginning, I had no bigger vision of starting something like what Bonsai Empire turned out to be. I mean, it was just a hobby project, and I really like doing it. I think in a few months after I started it, I already, because in Holland we speak Dutch, so my first website was in Dutch. But I think already 2 or 3 months after I started the website, I wanted to do an English one as well. But as a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, so probably the quality wasn't as good.
So in Holland, do you have to learn English from a young age then?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What age do you usually start learning English from?
Well,
is it like elementary school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but also the video games I played or the movies I watched, the series, everything is in English and then with Dutch subtitles. So without even making an effort, you already start learning English at the very youngest. And then, it goes from primary school all the way to high school. And then I did a English a university degree.
Okay.
So that helped.
Yeah, that definitely helps. Yeah.
Well, it was not an English degree, but it was my studies was in English. So.
Oh, like the whole degree was in English. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I guess there are quite a few countries in Europe where they really focus on speaking English. Like I know Holland is one. I think Belgium is probably one as well, maybe. But you go to other places. Yeah, Scandinavia as well.
Holland, Scandinavia are probably the best.
And I've heard somewhere that like Sweden, the people in Sweden speak more proper English, better English. I say more proper English. It sounds terrible, but they speak better English than we do in the States, and we're that's our native language there for the most part. So.
Not sure if it's true though. But
I don't know.
They're good.
They are quite good. Yeah, it's hard to tell sometimes. So so when you first started the site, you started it in Dutch, and then you shifted a little bit to English, and then how many languages are you up to now in terms of? I mean, you've got separate sites for all the different languages, basically. How many languages do you have now, and what are they?
Right now, there's the 11th and 12th language were launched about 3 months ago. So right now it's 12. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. What can you list them off, or at least a few of them anyway?
Oh yeah, no, it's all the European languages mostly. So English, German, the Dutch, French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, which is mostly aimed at Brazil, and then Japanese, Chinese, Polish, Russian. I think that's 12.
Japanese and Chinese, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So that one's up then. That one's all right. Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah. So what? I mean, I'm guessing English is probably the biggest site that gets hit for the most part. What's the second? Spanish? For number, yes.
Yeah.
I know there's a huge market down in Latin America.
Absolutely.
That's really tied into it. Yeah. So, and of course you got the guys in Spain too. I would say out of all the European countries, the Spanish right now, Spain, it's top of the top in terms of quality.
Yeah.
I think there's lots of reasons for that. I heard that, I don't know if it was like a former prime minister and then like the king of Spain are both patrons of bonsai.
Yeah.
So that helps a lot. But of course they've also got, great material
exactly.
there too.
Yeah, they have wonderful material. It's crazy.
Yeah, some of the best in Europe.
Yeah. And I'd add Italy to the list. For
sure. Oh yeah. Italy's up there
and
too.
more places, but out of the top of my mind, I would just scream out Italy and Spain.
Yeah. So when you started shifting the site from Dutch into English and then the multiple languages, is that when you went from just making a website about your hobby to more sort of the educational focus? And then how did you build the educational part of the site? Were you using like outside sources or just coming from you for the most part? Like how did you build the site to make it educational?
Yeah, I think. If you look at what Bonsai Empire is right now and what I want it to be is not it has to be a platform. It's not my site. It hasn't been for a long time because there's 12 languages and obviously I don't do that all myself. Every language has its own translator and there's a lot of guest bloggers, experts who write the more advanced topics. So it's good to have me a little bit more in the background, and to have Bonsai Empire as a platform where other people feel welcome, and where also experts have their own little stage.
Yeah, I mean, where they've got their stage, their platform. I mean, you're just a facilitator basically.
Exactly.
Now. Yeah. So you manage the site, you make sure it stays up and running, and then of course you're reaching out to these different professionals to ask for content, perhaps that this person is an expert in styling this, or in grafting or whatever. You reach out to that person, you get them to write an article or produce a video or something, right? And then it goes up on the site. So it's more. I like the community aspect of it. So I think that was the first introduction for you and me. I don't know if it wasn't you, it was another fellow who was working with you at the time, wrote me a message about, would I write something about, detail wiring trees, I think, for the site. Yeah. So, and that was a long time ago, maybe 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, I guess.
Probably 7 years ago or so.
Yeah.
So that was my first introduction. I'd known about the site a little bit, but my first introduction to actually working with you or with Bonsai Empire as a company. So, and then I at that point when I submitted the article, I went through the whole backlog and looked through all the information.
Exactly.
So, so your target market though is, I mean, I guess you work in the whole range, but sort of you're really targeting kind of the people who are just getting into bonsai, right?
That's a big group of my visitors, because the website at this moment has about 1 million visits every month.
Wow. That's incredible.
To me, it's still, I know it's crazy.
That's unreal.
It's so much. At the biggest events, there's 40,000 people, and we have that. Well, I don't know, but like probably every day or so.
That's insane.
But that's the big numbers are a lot of people, just Googling help. I have a bonsai tree. What should I do with it?
Right.
So you hit my website and you start learning from the very, very basics. The articles are, at least the beginning of the articles are written in a way that you can really scan through it and very quickly find out what you should do with this tree you just got. But even like if you read more of the same article, it gets a little bit more advanced, and I guess up until intermediate level. But that's where you get in, and then I think increasingly over the years, especially the last few years, the level has gone up also to more advanced articles. But that's the kind of content that experts write. Not me. So
right.
You wrote about developmental wiring.
Yeah, developmental wiring. For exhibition and then long-term development.
Exactly, so. and that's superb. And I couldn't do that myself. I don't. It's not me. That's
sure. Yeah. So I mean, you consider yourself a bonsai hobbyist, and then the sort of facilitator of the website.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. And Bonsai Empire is your full-time career, right? Yeah. So that's why you're always on the road, always traveling around. Like, how many exhibitions do you typically go to in a year? Do you have any idea, just offhand?
Oh wow!
Or how many countries you normally visit in a year for bonsai-related stuff?
I mean, obviously, for me, living in Amsterdam, Europe is nothing's too far away.
Right.
I guess I go to the States at least once a year, and Japan. Last year, I think I went to Japan 3 times.
3 times? Wow. Okay.
And then a lot of other countries in Asia, Taiwan and China, and So I don't know if you add it up, probably 10 or 20.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that's
separate travels. It is. I try to reduce a little bit because it's very time consuming, and I need to spend more time, behind the desk and actually working on the website and getting projects done.
Yeah, so I'm glad there's someone like you out there doing that, because that's my least favorite thing to do. Is I like editing the videos and all that kind of stuff, but like handling the emails and all the stuff on the back end for my website, and all the comments and questions that come in, like keeping up with all of that is really hard to do. So it's good to have a site like Bonsai Empire where people can go to. You've got a forum as well where people can kind of log in and they ask questions of each other.
Exactly.
Do you have professionals in the forum sometimes?
There's the level varies. Obviously, a lot of beginners also hit the forum. So. But there's different levels.
So if a beginner gets in there and they have a question, there's usually a good amount of people in that intermediate or upper level that can answer that question and kind of help facilitate.
I'm also
the conversation.
impressed by how much time and effort the regular posters, how much time they put in helping beginners.
Right.
And especially with beginners, the questions tend to be very similar. You know,
Right.
what kind of tree is this?
Right.
How do I do the watering? And
can I keep my juniper inside on my
yeah,
radiator?
exactly. Why can I not keep it inside?
Right.
Are you really sure I cannot keep it inside? Like, yeah, I mean, and it gets annoying for, of course, for regular posters.
Sure.
But they spend crazy amounts of time in helping people, and that's awesome. I think that's very much in line with the philosophy that I had for my website to make it a place where, you know, people can get in and make progress in their new hobby.
Right.
But you know, as for answering all the emails and that's kind of where I get a lot of help. I hire people. And, I used to do my web design and building the website myself, and that's been a long time ago. And
you sort of pass that off to third-party countries.
It's too much work.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a lot. So I made my site, but it's not interactive at all. It's just like, here's my stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice and simple.
Yeah.
But I don't change it. I just leave it like that. Whereas yours, you update it every few years. The formats change. When was the last time you did that major format change to the site? It was in the last couple of years, wasn't it?
Yeah. The format has been more or less the same, but the design has changed
the layout,
a lot.
right?
Yeah. And the interface and the whole user experience in the website has changed a lot.
Right.
But
there's a huge science behind all of
Yeah.
that. You know, you put this photo with this text in this part of the site on the left-hand side, the colors
fonts,
versus the right-hand side. Like,
super complex.
it can completely change what people look at
Yeah.
on the site and where they go.
yeah, also for the different languages of the website, it's mostly in details that like in large it's the same design for the languages, but especially in details there's a lot of changes.
Is there anything that's related to culture in there? Like,
Yeah,
this culture looks
absolutely.
at certain parts
Absolutely.
of the thing,
Absolutely.
you know, the page versus other cultures.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean the first languages I had after Dutch and English was German, French, Spanish, quite close to the culture that I'm from. But as soon as, you know, Russian or Japanese, I mean for me the more exotic languages, I was relying more and more on the translating team to not translate but to actually more rewrite with the original text in mind and following the more or less the same structure but rewriting it.
Okay, so the first time you and I met each other in person, I think it was in Japan, wasn't it? Yeah.
Osaka.
Was it Osaka?
Yeah.
Oh,
At
it was at Fujikawa-san's nursery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that the same trip that I was doing a demo later on in Takamatsu?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you came to the nursery, we hung out and talked a little bit there, and then you came to the demo that I did in Takamatsu. It was the Takamatsu Bonsai Convention, I guess, which was pretty cool. And then at that point, we started having conversations about building like an online video platform, right? I think. I mean, I had done videos for a while. You'd been doing them for a while. Like, I think you saw my content, you know, in terms of the stuff I could potentially teach as being maybe beneficial to the site. And then, of course, I viewed your site as obviously being, you know, one of the most popular or the most popular bonsai website in the world. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to work together with you. And I guess you sort of viewed that way with me.
I think when I went to your place, so we didn't meet. We chatted and we emailed, but it was about time we met face to face, and then I think we both had the feeling like there's something we can do together. We weren't really sure what, but yeah, obviously you're the bonsai master who's been studying for freaking 7 years of your life in Japan, know everything there is to know, and I had built the platform where, you know, so obviously there was a good match possible, but we didn't really figure out what exactly. And I think a few weeks later we started talking about, like, by email again. It's like, hey, we should do online courses,
right?
Which was on my mind for some time, but I didn't really know how exactly how to do it. You know, nobody had done it before. So then we started talking, like, where would we start, with what kind of topics, what level. So beginner course was the first one.
That was just the natural way to go about it, I think.
Yeah.
Start at the bottom, start at the beginning, work your way up to the upper courses. So that the beginner course that we put out, what year was that? That's got to be at least 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think 5 or 6 years ago.
5 or 6, yeah. I can't believe it's been that long. It doesn't feel like that.
Nah.
Yeah, it really doesn't feel like
Must
that.
have been like 2011 or 12.
Yeah, I didn't actually start making videos on YouTube until 2011.
Okay, so it must be after
slightly
12.
after that. Probably 2012, maybe 2013,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, so Yeah. So quite a while ago, but yeah, it's crazy how time flies. So that course I think it ended up being quite successful because that's your main sort of target market, like we said.
Yeah,
So
I think that course was very much in line with the kind of visitors that would land on my website from Google or social media. And then once we started making more advanced courses, at the same time, Bonsai Empire was developing and becoming more attractive to people searching for more advanced information,
right.
with more advanced articles. And I guess people doing the beginner's course, most of the people who ended up signing up for the next course, which was the intermediate course,
Right.
A lot of the students from the beginner course, they continued. So I think with us, they grew. They learned.
And that was the goal. You
Yeah.
know, it wasn't necessarily to make the intermediate course and force everybody up into it, but the fact that we made the beginner course and then we made the intermediate course and then everybody did want to move up to the next level. I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
You know, and the intermediate course, both the beginner and the intermediate course that we did together, they're very technical in nature. So it covers the basic course covers like the super basics. You know, like how to design a very basic tree. You know, what soil you're supposed to use, all that kind of stuff. And then the intermediate course is more of that sort of long-term developmental stuff that you don't. It's really hard to teach, and it's really hard to like give a lecture on something like that. But if you have the video and the visual, and you can show, this is what you do to Japanese maples this time of year. This is what you do to trident maples or junipers or whatever. You get that basic maintenance information, and then people every year during that particular time of year, they can watch the video and follow along. And I've had many people since we've released that course who've said, that's exactly what I do. You know, when June rolls around and it's time to decandle the black pines, I get the video out and I watch it in steps, stage by stage, and I do exactly that. And it's done, wonders for my black pines or whatever it is.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's really cool to see that people are actually using it in the way that I envisioned that they would use it, and I think you probably did as well when we put it together.
Yeah, I think from an administrative point of view of the website, I keep track very closely of how many of the beginner students go into the intermediate course. I keep track of how many students keep coming back to the content, because you have lifetime access. So the students in there, they can just not watch it for. They cannot watch it for a year and then come back and watch everything again and again. So a lot of students go back and forth at least 2 or 3 times.
Right, and refresh their memories.
Get and then over
in
time.
shape.
So that's nice. Like the activity in the intermediate course is consistently high, which is good.
Right. Yeah, I've talked about it in previous podcasts, but I view bonsai as kind of like it's an emergent art, so it emerges from the basic maintenance techniques. You defoliate a trident maple at this time, this many times a year over the course of 15 years, and you get this excellent result at the end. It's not so much like a conifer where you wire the branches into place and the shape looks nice. It takes year after year after year of development. So to have that kind of resource that provides you that information, I think people are starting to understand the value of that, and that it does take kind of there's a long-term aspect to it, and then the art, the beauty emerges 10 years down the line.
Exactly.
It doesn't just happen immediately.
No.
Right.
And the beauty is in making that happen yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So right now, you and I are working on an advanced course, right? So we're moving the course along from the beginner to intermediate. Now we're working on the advanced course. So I think, you approached me about doing the advanced course. It had been in the back of my mind for a while, but I have so much other stuff going on, traveling and setting up the nursery and all that kind of stuff. I was like, I want to do this, but I don't know if I'm going to have time to do it. And then you approached me about it, and I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's jump all over it. So I think it was time, because it's been 2 years, right, since we released the intermediate course. So it's time to have an advanced course, right? So I'm pretty stoked about it coming out.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's nice how it, you take your time, but I know that you've been filming ever since we launched the intermediate course. Which is also, I think, the beauty of the advanced course, because more than ever, this shows trees and techniques over time. It doesn't really help to only show how to graft a branch to a tree. It helps a lot if you see that same tree develop over time.
Right.
And so you actually see what happens and what can go wrong also over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's nice. So and the link between intermediate and advanced was I guess it was a very logical step for us to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to your point on watching the trees develop. So in the advanced course, for example, there's a section on Scion grafting junipers. So every year I go to Bonsai Sense in Spain, in Mallorca. I have a school there, so I go twice a year. And one of the owners of the nursery, Rafa, he and I started grafting. It was a Phoenicia juniper, which is a local native juniper to Spain. We grafted it. Scion grafted it with Itoigawa foliage about 2.5 or 3 years ago. So I started filming it then with no intention of necessarily putting it in an advanced course. I just wanted to have the footage available. So in the event that I wanted to make something later, I could. So we filmed that, and then we filmed the whole process. I go back every 6 months. So we film it every 6 months when I go back and show the stages of, all right, here's the initial graft. Here's how much foliage we take off 6 months later. Here's how much foliage we take off another 6 months later. Here's how we wire the initial branch structure. And then here's how we develop that into a nice bonsai. Right? So you get that whole range, and I think it's going to be really cool to see that.
I mean, that's
in
beautiful.
The
I can't wait, man.
Yeah, so and that's a part of it too. I said with the emergent art, bonsai being an emergent art, you do the grafting and you see the results 5 or 8 years down the line. So to be able to show that in video format and show the steps and the stages to get there, I'm hoping that people will be as excited as I am, about making it, about seeing it, right, on the back end.
And for me, also being a student at the advanced level, it's very motivational to see what doing something now will mean for my tree over the course of the next 5 years or so.
Right.
Because I actually see what happens to the tree that you show on the video. That's great.
Yeah, so it's an extra added layer there. So yeah, absolutely. So getting back to sort of stepping back from the courses and getting back to kind of what you're doing with Bonsai Empire now, like you said, you travel to 10, 15, 20 countries a year. Is it mostly to go film like exhibitions? I mean, you get asked as sort of, I would assume as kind of potential promotion, like if an exhibition, they're putting on an exhibition right now, like I said, we're in India. I'm sure they approached you about coming over to take video of the show, and then for them it's promotion on the back end. But when you go into a situation like that, what are you looking to show off when you're there? I mean, are you looking to just sort of feature kind of what's there, or feature the best of the best, or kind of show the whole range? Like what's kind of your goal with the videos now that you do just like on a regular basis?
I try to show the whole range. The way I film, it's not like you do your vlogs, and I like them a lot. I mean, it really shows the life of a bonsai professional worldwide.
Not so educational, but just for fun.
Yeah, well,
just for entertainment purposes. Yeah.
There's education in there as well, and like for me, I do different kinds of movies. Like there's movies of an exhibition. I would only show the exhibition, and not. I mean, it's educational because you can see the trees from up close and all kinds of different angles. But I mean, there's not an education in actually explaining techniques or anything like that. And most events have demonstrations, so that I film those kind of demos as well. Although I do think that most demos are not necessarily very educational. It's often entertainment.
Yeah, that's the trouble with the demos. Like you have to wow the audience. You have to be surprised at the results.
Yeah.
But the tree has to live afterwards.
Yeah.
So you have to find that fine balance.
Yeah,
and almost always
difficult.
the exhibitions or the demos or the exhibitions where they have demos are at the wrong time of the year.
Yeah.
Like right now we're in India, it's always the wrong time of the year here to work on, junipers, which they have us doing a little bit of. So we're trying to hedge against, killing the tree by, being a little bit more careful and aware of what we're doing. But if you're working on like a tropical tree, like Sutin Sukoso visit from Boston is here, and he worked on a ficus yesterday. I mean, we're in India; it's perfect. You can work on ficus, you can cut it back, wire it, no problem. It flushes back out again. But you have to wow the audience, and then on the back end, the tree has to survive. Because if either one of those things doesn't happen, the audience thinks, that professional really isn't professional. They don't
must
really
be stressful.
know.
And all that in like 2 or 3 hours.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, you got to get it done
horrible.
super quickly. And like I want to educate the audience as much as possible. So you got to talk while you do the demo if possible. And with this particular convention, it's a little difficult because they don't have, like the head mics or whatever. So you actually have to stop and hold the mic and talk and then go back and work on the tree. So, but it's good, I think, from your perspective, and to show off to people around the world kind of all these different artists from around the world, how they approach bonsai, how they style the trees.
Exactly.
And, what's sort of your take on that aspect of it? Seeing the different artists from around the world, do you see vast differences? This kind of gets back to what we talked about at the beginning, but do you see vast differences, in regions?
Absolutely. There's there's different styles of. I was at an event in China where a completely international group of experts from Latin America, from Europe, from Japan, US, everywhere.
Right.
And the funny thing was that everybody got a juniper tree. So they had maybe 40 juniper trees
and
all being worked
the
on.
Same, right? Yeah.
And if you're from Latin America, I guess you don't work much with junipers. You
Right.
work a lot with
It's happened a little bit more now because people are field growing them, but it's still pretty rare.
So, it's every. So what I'm saying is, it matters a lot in what region you practice your hobby or your art. And if you're demonstrating in another country with very different kind of trees,
right?
Yeah,
you can definitely see a vast difference for sure. Yeah,
and not so much in your technical skills, but and also not in your aesthetical skills, but more in understanding the tree species and knowing exactly how they work and how to do it, what looks good on this exact species. I mean,
right. Yeah, no, I completely agree. So, and you see that, I'm sure, reflected in the exhibitions too when you travel around. So, one of the more recent ones you went to was in Taiwan, right? Yeah. What was the name of the exhibition?
The Wafong show.
Wafong. Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, there's probably some intonation in there that we're not hitting just right. You probably said "screw your mother" or something in Chinese. But so you went to this exhibition. I saw the video of it. I've actually never traveled to Taiwan. It's one of the places I'd like to go.
One of the few places
I haven't been. So I'd like to go see the trees there. And part of the reason I want to go see the trees there is because I saw your video, online. But like the quality of the trees there is. You can see that there's attention to detail like what you see in Japan, but the final results there's a very subtle difference, I think, between their trees and what you see in Japan. But they're all striving for really high level of quality. It's just it manifests itself slightly differently. So, you mentioned earlier, we were talking before the podcast started about some of the pines that were there. Yeah. Those were some of the trees that stylistically were kind of way off the deep end in terms of if you compare them to Japan, but a lot of the deciduous trees and the junipers were quite similar, right?
Yeah, or even beat the Japanese easily.
Right.
At species that probably the Japanese don't work on a lot.
Sure.
Especially the ficus or premna.
Right.
But I think that show was a great example of how bonsai can be an art that's the same but also very different at the same time, but not necessarily with a change in the quality.
Right.
I mean, they're ficus trees, the premna trees, even the maples and some junipers. They were incredibly beautiful and but also very different from Japan. So they really have their own style and that is perfect. I mean, that's what should be happening and I think what is happening around the world, where you work with your local material, you have your own style. You need a very good understanding of the art. So I personally think that studying in Japan, if you want to get very serious about bonsai, is still, absolutely required to understand the techniques and aesthetics. Maybe even more important than the philosophy and understanding, what the ideas are behind the aesthetics and. That's critical. You have to know all this before you can start changing it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to know sort of the basics. People talk about like the rules of bonsai. I don't mean that necessarily. No. I mean like the technical side of stuff. So basically what you have to do in any art really, but particularly in bonsai, is you have to identify what you value, and then you take steps to get to that valued thing that you want. So like, for example, ramification on a trident maple or something. Yeah. If that's something that you value, there's only a certain number of stimuli that you can apply to certain plants to get that result in the long run. So you have to know the technical kind of basic side of stuff, before you can kind of separate yourself and kind of move away from that. So there's a tendency, particularly in the U.S., I think it has a lot to do with the culture there, people wanting to be very individualistic. Right. Everybody's got their own take on things. Okay. Yeah. But they kind of dive. They put the cart before the horse. Right. Say, right. Exactly. They dive into it a little too quickly.
They try to leapfrog.
Yeah, without kind of understanding those things. There's nothing wrong with branching away and trying new things, but you got to have sort of that basic understanding of if I want to get to this goal, if I value this thing, how do I get to that? And then there's certain stimuli that you get to that. So, like the difference between what you see in Taiwan and what you see in Japan, to me, they've got the same amount of attention to detail, but it manifests itself in a very subtle difference, and then I've talked about this in other podcasts, but like in the States and maybe in Europe to some degree, but a lot in the States, people want to separate themselves as much as possible.
Right.
So there isn't a whole lot of value placed on subtle changes.
Right.
But in Asia, there really is, particularly in Japan, and I would say in Taiwan as well, that there's a lot more attention to detail. And then because of that, you get these subtle changes. And being able to identify, okay, this person did this person did that, just by looking at the subtle differences, I think that's much more fascinating than, being loud and shouting at the top of your lungs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think adding to that is also a different perspective in terms of, long-term vision on a tree. It's my impression that in Japan and in Taiwan as well, they're in it for long term. That they do something now, and it's okay if even the next generation has the benefits of that.
Right.
Whereas in Europe, especially, this is a mentality that a lot of beginners also have. They want quick bonsai.
Right.
They want quick results, and that's what we feed them in the demonstrations as well.
Yeah, that's another problem.
Before and after, in 4 hours, it goes from absolutely nothing to beautiful.
Right.
But especially with deciduous trees, like demonstrations are almost always junipers and pines.
Right.
So you can have those immediate results, and it's great material.
Right.
You might not always see it's great, but very often it's great. If you're a hobbyist, that's not the right way to start.
Right. Yeah, it gives a bad impression or the wrong impression. I think. Yeah.
And it's not what bonsai is about.
No,
anyway,
no, yeah.
But separate from that, but so this perspective of like the very long term. That really helps to make much better art than what you get if you want to be fast. And when I was at the Wafang show in Taiwan, it was striking me actually because the trees were incredible, like super high level, but so attention to detail in their trees was 10 out of 10. But the attention to detail, not so much pots, but tables, display tables, or the lack of any display table, not showing an accent plant, and never a scroll or nothing. So the whole display wasn't that good. So that's something they're not so interested in.
Right.
Very different from what we see in Japan.
No, absolutely. I think I've always said, with bonsai, to me, like the subtle differences are really interesting. But when it comes to display, to me, that's the opportunity to really experiment and kind of step away from the norm. In Japan, you go to the exhibitions, like the Kokufu or the Taikon 10, Sakufu 10. They're all sort of, I don't know, they can feel a little bit boring in terms of the setup because there's just tree after tree after tree.
Yeah.
The big trees, it's always one big tree and an accent plant. And the medium trees, it's always three elements, a 3-point display and a shohin, or there's a couple of variations. Yeah, it's a little bit rigid. The Taikon 10's a little more freeform to some degree. You have more room to experiment, but it still, for the most part, kind of fits in those categories.
Yeah.
Whereas, there have been exhibitions in Europe I've seen, some in the States as well. And of course, I think it was it Robert Stevens who did crazy exhibition in Indonesia a few years ago. Yeah. But it worked, and it worked because the trees were good. Yeah. That's the thing. Like the quality of the trees still has to be high. You still have to have that, artistic, aesthetic value to the trees. You can't just hodgepodge crap trees together and make a wild display and expect it to work. Exactly. So, it's one of those things where I think if people sort of focus on, again, the basics to start with, learn the technical stuff, then sort of separate themselves in a subtle way, and then with the display, take it to that whole nother level. To me, that's where you can really start to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And still then, with display, you first need to understand what makes a good display.
Yeah, of course.
It's not...
There's balance there, too.
Yeah. I don't think it's something that you look at and you just understand. It doesn't work like that. You have to, especially display. To me, it's very complex. I consider myself an absolute novice if it comes to the display. I can see that I like something, and I know the so-called rules. I can try to apply them, and I can see why something works and not. But to really understand that, I don't. So, to me, it would be very difficult actually to do a very creative new display because. You still need to understand what makes a good display.
Totally,
There's a lot of knowledge behind that too.
Like flow and balance and all of that kind of stuff. So
the stuff that the Japanese perfected over the course of hundreds of years, especially in the last decades.
Right.
So
what people say is like quote unquote traditional Japanese display with Again, in the kokufu, you got the big tree and the little accent plant, or the 3-point display. Everything kind of flows together. That's not really traditional Japanese display. That's actually more contemporary Japanese display. It's just become the norm. So people kind of view it as a little bit stagnant. And I would agree to some degree. But if you see those displays in person, they're balanced in such a way that they all look aesthetically pleasing. Like you can still enjoy them, even if it's one right after the other, the other.
Exactly.
So
it might get a little bit boring at the show, but every unique display is correct and beautiful. And
right, there's just something about it that flows and looks nice. So I think again you have to study that kind of stuff before you break away and try new things.
But the breaking away is good. You see it increasingly, and it's experimenting. I don't like a lot of the creative displays, but there's also a lot that I do like a lot.
Right.
I mean, the more you deviate from what we used to do or what we know how to do,
it's a little bit
the harder it is to appreciate it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But still, you can see displays that are absolutely beautiful, correct, but also are very different from what you're used to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's actually one thing, getting back to the advanced course, we're doing a 2-part release, right? So we're doing a release in May of this year, and then we're going to do one later in the fall. The release in the fall is going to have a huge section on display, and it's going to focus exclusively on display in Japan because I want people to understand, it's an advanced course, but it'll be the basics of display in Japan, and this is how you get to that final result. This is why it looks so balanced. This is why this element is chosen for this position in the box display of a shohin display, for example. I want people to understand that because there's a lot that goes into it that I think is lost on folks. I really haven't seen a good resource for it at this stage. So that's why I want to do it for the advanced course, but that'll be in the second half of the release. And then my goal with that is for people to see that, understand it, recreate it, regurgitate it, then reinvent it, and then do something completely different.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to kind of there's steps in the process. Like you have to understand that when you mix blue and yellow, it makes green, right? When you're painting, right? So you need to know each of these sort of technical elements, and then you get that final result at the end, and then you can break away from there. So that's the goal for me anyway with that part of the course.
That's going to be interesting. Even just walking around the show, knowing all these things you will learn in the advanced course.
Right.
I mean, that's going to improve also my the way I appreciate the shows, because the more you understand it, the more you will be able to appreciate.
Right. Yeah. That's not a hodgepodge of stuff. There's a reason why each of those things are there. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether or not you agree with it in the end or want to change it, that's fine. But you got to understand it first. I think. Okay, so I think that's probably going to do it for this episode of the podcast. So, Oscar, where's the best place for people to go to follow your stuff? Obviously, bonsaiempire.com. But if they go to Facebook, you've got Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. What are the tags for those, or the handles for those?
All right, yeah. Well,
however the kids say
the
it.
Facebook page is probably the most active part of social media for Bonsai Empire. And the YouTube channel, obviously.
The YouTube channel, obviously, yeah. So it's just, I guess you just go to Facebook, type in Bonsai Empire, and the page will pop up, right?
You'll find it.
Yeah, you'll find it. Yeah, you're all over the place. So
it's a lot of Bonsai Empire out there.
That's the way it should be, though. Bettering the world of bonsai. So cool. All right, man. Thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.